I
This
just put
conference will
la-
now be recorded.
I just put up last week's webinar on YouTube. I had uploaded it, but it must have gotten hung up 50% of the way through. So I thought it was published and it wasn't. So I just re-uploaded it. So it should be up now.
Yeah, my picture should be a lot clearer than it used to be, hopefully, because I got a different webcam
Yeah,
versus what I was using because I was using the laptop one and it was like really grainy.
right. Hey Google, turn off shop lamp. Ooh, that took a
Oh,
little bit of it away.
two, I want to ask you on my camera. Do you want me to hold off sending that to you until I get my new one and then I can try out the cords and stuff differently myself?
That's that's fine if you want
I can
to.
I can do some testing on it myself just out of my own curiosity. And
Mhm.
two, when I send that back to you, do you want everything or just the camera?
Um, it'd be best to get back everything you don't use. That way we can confirm whether it's good or not and go back and reverse engineer anything that may be wrong.
I see that's sort of what I wanted to do because I wanted to test it to see if there's a wire possibly that's coming from the camera into that and the camera was still good, but a feed wire or something that's just not. I wanted to sort of just tinker myself out of my own
Right.
geekiness.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can do
Okay.
that. Just whatever you don't use, just send it back. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't know when that's going to be here anyways, but
gotcha. So, all right. Well, if anybody has any questions, be sure and just speak up and we'll be glad to help.
oh, what is the minimum fire point on these Reese tubes supposed to be?
On the 80 watts, I don't know exactly. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I hit 4%.
Yeah, well, that's technically not quite 4% because our range is from 7 to 70. So 0 to 100 is technically from 7 to 70. So you're probably firing it a little bit higher than that.
Okay,
But
because I quit at 4% because I was doing something and I was like, why is this still firing at 4?
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't think they went that low.
we jump up the minimum to 7%, so you don't have to go so high before you start hitting your zone where you'll start getting ionization. So you don't have
Okay,
to be up to 20 or or whatever. We offset it by 7%. So 0 is 7%.
okay, because I was just trying to etch a piece of tape so I wasn't burning through it,
Yeah,
and I kept dropping the power and kept dropping. I'm like, when the hell is this thing
yeah,
quit burning through a piece of
yeah.
tape?
Well, I mean, it's good to know that minimum power, where you actually fire. That can come in handy, especially when you're doing stuff like that, or if you just want to perforate or just etch a vector or something on a piece of something thin. It's a good
Yeah,
thing to have. So,
didn't go down lower than that. I just once I got that point, I got what
yeah,
I needed and I quit.
yeah. Let's see if I can find the specs on that Reese tube. The W290 triggering voltage 24K, current 26. It doesn't show. I thought it showed the firing. Maybe it's on there. I'm on Light Object site. I might have to go to Reese to see. I can find out what it is if you just want to know.
I was just curious because I can still keep dropping and seeing what it is. I was forget what I was even trying to do.
Hmm.
Oh, it's when I was doing I was with the rotary when I was trying to do the whole circumference, getting the lineup. Before I forget what it's
Oh
called.
yeah, I'm putting the tape on there so you didn't burn the cup. Yeah.
And I was doing on. I have a bunch of maple dowels
Okay.
for rolling pins, and I was using those. I burnt like 3 of those up. I was just trying to get it to quit firing through the tape.
Yeah. Yeah. You could,
And
if you're doing vector lines, you could put it in perforation mode and effectively lower your power that way too.
okay,
So it'll do dashed lines. So you're pulsing like multiple times. It's kind of a hack to lower your power in essence, I guess.
I did do finally after. I was actually Thursday when we had the last one. I said I hadn't got brave enough to do a tumbler. It was
Hmm.
after that I was like, I have to do one. So I did a tumbler and did a can koozie thing, and they come out perfect.
Hmm.
I think I used like 530
Yeah, that sounds
is I
about
think
right.
where I was at, and I think I was at point oh 0.08, and I was focused out at 8.
Yeah. Yeah, that's similar to what I run on a whole lot of stuff.
Okay.
So How's it going, Jeremy?
It's going all right. I'm headed
Cool.
home.
All right, man. So,
It's at the airport lounge right now on the way home.
oh, okay. I got you. Yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, yeah. Stay there too long, have to take out a second mortgage. It's kind of like going and watch hockey.
Yeah.
I've never even been on a plane.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah.
I just had to go get my driver's license renewed because I forgot about it. And it was Ohio during the COVID thing. They let them, because mine expired in April 2020.
Mhm.
So they let him go until July of this year for anybody who was there. And I almost forgot it. I actually was doing something business. And then I said, what do I need to get the federal? And the lady, I said, what's the federal for? She says, well, in 2023, you'll need it to fly on a plane and to get in federal buildings. I'm like, well, I don't have intentions on doing either. And she said, well, you don't need to worry about it then.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a similar thing. So it's
Quicker than
enhanced.
driving, though.
Yeah, you got that right. I'm no road warrior by any means, but I've been on a few sardine cans before, and it's not too fun sometimes.
My wife does it.
Yeah.
I figured I can get 4 wheels. I can go anywhere I want to.
Yeah. I'm having trouble finding that other thing. So it looks like the machines are starting to come in a little earlier, sometimes without notice. But and that used to be pretty common too. They'd show up 2 weeks early. So I hope that stays a trend. Maybe we can get caught up a little bit. So if anybody's got anything, feel free to jump in. Hey Danny, how's it going, man? Turn your mic on.
Always got swag.
I see you got your your
Yes.
I actually like those shirts because they have something on the back too. So.
Right.
There you go.
Did you get your monitor hooked up? The pressure monitor?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm working on. That's the chore for this weekend.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna add another one so I can watch my high and low since I have them separate now. So I'm probably gonna cut out a box or something to mount those things in instead of trying to surface mount them or mount them somewhere else. I'll just put a little box on top there and recessed down in there a little bit.
So let me see what so that I can copy it.
I mean, you could probably even put it on the inside, and sticky tape it, somewhere out of the way, and then just look down there when you want to see it. It doesn't have to be front and center necessarily. It's handy that way, but
Right.
got to be careful with the drill bit. That's for sure.
Well, I guess
Especially up in that area.
theoretically, could you mount them inside
Yeah.
the door and then just look at it, the side door over there, and then just look in from the front end to the side?
You could.
Because you're not really going to have to monitor it constantly.
Yeah, just got to make sure that the head doesn't, contact any of that plumbing and stuff in there that you put in, because on some of those machines it's closer than others.
Yeah.
But I think Robert was talking about on his 24, the head made contact with some of the peripherals, when installing that. So you need to lay it out and think about it real good before you start drilling holes and mounting things, to make sure that it's not going to be clear of everything. So.
Jeremy, have you mounted yours yet?
Brian, have you sent me mine yet? You might have. I've been out of town, so
I don't know. Let me see.
I've got it yet. So no, Danny, I haven't mounted it yet. I might have received it.
Yeah, you should have gotten it. Let's see.
Yeah, I might have, Brian. My wife hasn't notified me of all my incoming shipments yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was one of the first ones.
Yeah, that's
Well, I know what I did. I didn't send it through this shipping system. Let me double check and I'll let you know, but I'm sure it went out. So I'll find tracking on it if I
I'm
can.
definitely not missing it. So.
Okay. Yeah, not where you're at right now anyway.
I enjoy what Jeremy does so that I can see what it's like. Him having a 51 makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Hi, Brian. This is Hardeep here.
Machines.
Hi, Brian. Hardeep here. I have a question.
Hey, Hardeep, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I've missed the last few. Thursday's not a very good day, but today's a holiday for us, so that's good.
Gotcha.
Um, for whatever reason, my camera is not working. I've got my Thunder t-shirt on, so thank you and Cheyenne for it.
Okay, sure.
So the question is, I'm getting my machine next week,
Okay.
but I have not got the stuff from Texas yet. So is there any stuff in that box that comes from Texas without which you can't operate the machine, like basic stuff and things, or?
No, everything you need to run the machine is in the box with the machine. So it's
Okay.
effectively ready to run right out of the box.
Oh, okay.
So any of the accessories are just that. They're, just accessories and performance add-ons and that kind of thing.
Oh,
So,
okay. Okay.
mhm.
All right. Just wanted to make sure because I think there's some of the stuff coming is on back order and it won't be here for a couple more weeks.
Right. We're dealing with the camera thing. We're trying to get the production up and get our fulfillment done on some of those cameras that we have back ordered. But we're making some good strides in catching up. So we
Yeah.
apologize for that
No,
delay.
no, no, no worries. Yeah. Thanks.
Hmm.
Hey,
Brian, I have
Brian,
a question.
oh,
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
So my so this is one thing that I'm having a hard time understanding: the relationship of power to, I'm sorry, the relationship of speed to the power.
Hmm.
And is there a speed that you shouldn't go too high, or a power you shouldn't go too high, or anything?
Well, not really. I mean, once you go too high, you start running into some issues with how fast a DC excited tube can pulse. But
Hmm.
that's a rabbit hole you don't need to jump down anytime soon, I don't think. But anything 500 or 600 or below or something like that is fine. You can run it, 7 or 800. I do that a lot. Imagine holding your hand up and putting a flame under it. If you hold the flame real slow, it's going to burn more. That's kind of how this works. So if you're going across it real fast, you don't really feel it. It does a light burn because this is actually beam of light we're using, so it behaves a little bit weird. But the slower you go, the deeper and darker it's going to burn because there's more dwell there. So that's the
Gotcha.
relationship. And then you just have to figure out how much power and how much speed are going to give you the output that you desire. And there's some tools to help with that, that generate some light burn files using the power scale, that
Yeah.
can show you a
I just
different
do it.
range of. Mhm.
Yeah, I do it a lot, which I'm so used to working on my cutting machine, so I always just do test cuts. I
Right.
do like small squares. That's just how I've been. I did download a couple of those. I just haven't actually made them yet, but
Mhm.
I just usually do a couple test cuts until I get something that I like, and then actually cut.
Gotcha. And ultimately that's the best experience, and if you document those and you kind of
Hmm.
learn, you kind of get the feel of it, it's just something that kind of comes. But there's always going to be that dialing in and stuff depending on materials
Yeah.
and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's a little bit weird, but it'll click eventually and you'll just kind of get it and then you just adjust. One thing I can recommend is don't change two values at the same time if you're adjusting, because then you don't know which way
Okay.
you're going or which way you went. Change the speed, change the speed. Okay, I've changed the speed and this is what it was, or change the power. But if you do both at a time, you don't really know which one's being more effective or whatnot. So
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Good point. Okay.
if you're doing it on the fly, if you're using
Yeah.
one of those tools, of course, that kind of automates that for you. So
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
I
keep in mind too, April, there's several ways to achieve the same results, right? So you can keep your power the same and increase your speed, and it'll be less dark, or you can slow it down and make it darker, or you keep the same speed and increase or decrease your power. And the other thing that a lot of people don't talk about is focus, right? So depending on how finite your design is, you may not need to be optimal focus. So you can defocus a little bit. A lot of people do it on tumblers to defocus a little bit, so you don't have as directly concentrated beam, so you don't end up scoring the metal under the powder coating, and it gets you a lot cleaner grade. So there's at least three different variables to think about: power, speed, and focus, and each one of those can achieve the same result depending on how you think about it. And the other thing
needed.
to think about,
And
a lot of people do the test files, but going in and just cutting a 1 inch by 1 inch box doesn't necessarily translate to your 4-foot wide design, right? Because you'll never see the full acceleration and deceleration, and then you don't see the min and max power values used if you never reach the higher speeds. So it's something to think about.
April, Robert has a pretty good video as well on YouTube. It explains the relationship between speed and power. If you want to go and have a look at that, it makes things pretty clear, I think. Yeah.
And another thing is, on a test file, if you have the luxury of being able to do a test on the actual file that you're going to do on the material that you're going to do, right? I always try to plan that in. It's not doing a one-off, right? But if I'm going to do a tumbler, if I've got a couple of tumblers, I'll do one, and I'll plan on dialing in the settings on it, make sure they look right, adjust it, and I'll adjust. Hey, that looks good. I'll adjust it a little bit more, pull it back, make sure I find the right setting, and then once I put the tumbler on that, it's right.
Yeah, and also the speed and power, that varies your depth too. You were talking about your cutter, and you adjust your depth on it, and then you're good. But with this, every layer, every dot could be a different depth actually, if you wanted it to be that way. If the file was set up correctly. So the speed and power also relate to how thick you're going to go through something when you cut it, whether you go all the way through or halfway through, and the focus is a huge deal on the cutting as well. So.
Yeah, and then air pressure is the other one, right? So it's adjusting the air pressure. And the other thing is, if you're unsure, start off with less power, a little bit faster. You can always go back and hit it a second or third time. You can't undo the burn, but you can always burn a second or third time to it. Mm-hmm. So you can always ease into it. That's what I found when you are doing something unusual or one-off. Always start real light and just add to it. And then the other thing is when you're doing that, you may find, especially if it's like a non-standard flat object. Right? So I was doing a stone for somebody. Right? There was a stone with engraving something in on it, and up at the peak of it, where it was focused, it had a good burn, and as it dropped out of focus, it was less. So I was able to go in and do one or two passes on the bit that was in focus, and then just go in, select part of the design, and then rerun it on the selected design, and then rerun the side, and effectively do it multiple times and just shade in the areas that I need to.
Jeremy, when you were talking about defocusing, are you talking about bringing the laser closer to the lens or further from the lens?
Further from the lens. So what I do, right, and this is something, if you have the camera, you need to keep your focal plane of your bed the same distance, and then manually focus your lens, right? Because if you move the object further away from the camera, then the camera alignment will be off. So you autofocus. I always take my lens all the way up, autofocus the substrate to the beam with the autofocus. That gets my camera in line. Then I will move over and manually adjust the focus with the lens if needed, either up or down.
Okay.
Now I finally did do my ramp test. A little bit slow doing that. 4.62.
Yeah, they can vary a little for sure.
And my 4-inch was 13.54.
Really? That's a little. Maybe a little beyond spec. You got it in backwards? I got the lens in upside down?
I don't think so. I mean, it cut through a 2x4 in 2 passes.
Yeah.
So I didn't have, of course, I had slow speed, but I had to double check my measurement on that, but I think that's where I was at on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something for everyone who hasn't done the ramp test. I seriously recommend it. I didn't do it to start off with. I got a bunch of good, useful parameters and examples I started using. Did the ramp test and found that I needed to retune and redo all that because I wasn't cutting it off in performance and wasn't dialed in the finest I could do.
Yeah, so what I did instead of focusing in at the 6, because the gauge is at 5.5, I just started using the side of the gauge and sort of went happy between what's recommended and what's optimal, and
Yeah,
just been running with that setting, so everything's consistent.
I cut
Yeah.
one of the little the step files with that little 1 millimeter steps, and then you can mark on that one thing. Hey, this is my optimal for cutting. This is my ideal focus. This is my tumbler. This is my block. This is my high res lens. This is my 1-inch lens.
The only problem with going to 4.62 is the magnets are in the way. Because I tested it, I'm like, how close are these magnets to that head? If I do it the front, I'm like, nope, just do it the 5.5. That way I'm clearing everything and I don't have to think about it. And then if I know if I have to go optimal, I can drop it and just be careful.
Chris asked in the chat what the ramp test is for, and when we say the focal point is the finest, best point of the beam, because the beam is actually like an hourglass. It converges and diverges, even though everybody thinks the laser beam is straight as an arrow. And so finding your optimal focal point is good, because there can be little variances in the manufacturing, even if it's in the thousandths, that can make a difference. And that, each setup could be a little different. So we say 6 millimeters, but here it shows that it could be anywhere from 4.5 to 6.5 is what the actual variance can be. So what you can do is use this test to find your optimal distance so that you can recalibrate, so to speak, and start using the correct one, so you have the exact perfect best focus you can have. And then there's an article here on the basics of focus as well. Mhm.
So right there, another way to think about it is if you've ever used a magnifying glass to burn something, maybe the males would have used it to burn ants or something when they were younger. But
That's exactly what I was thinking.
if you've used a magnifying glass to find your optimal point, you have to move it further or closer, right? And the same is, once you get to that optimal point, if you move it closer, it diverges. You move it further, and it still converges. That's the basics of any lens.
And the lens is made, technically that measurement, when we say a 2-inch lens or a 50.8 millimeter focal length lens, that means that the optimum focal point is from the face of the lens to the material, or wherever you're focusing, is exactly 2 inches. So we design our nozzles in a way that 6 millimeters, or that 1/4 inch that we tell you what that gap should be, is pretty close to what it be, but it can be closer. So that's really what this is for, is to make up for those little differences that may be there.
Yes. So I see that
the
4-inch. Go ahead.
At the end of the day, your distance is a random number, right? Is what you need to know is this is the spacing I need to get this result, and then you can duplicate that, right? Like even if you don't know what the thickness of your spacer is, I just know that this spacer fits, right? So like on the HR lens, right? Brian said it's the thickness of a quarter, right? Most people don't know what the thickness of a quarter is, but if you've got a quarter, you can set your depth. You can still have an optimal focus, and you don't actually need to know what the number is.
And here's that basics of focus video again, and then there's one that talks about how the focus and the ThunderCam are so important, and how our autofocus plays so well with the camera system. So I'm going to copy that link and put it in the chat, and I'll also put the one in there, Chris, for the ramp test, if you want to look at that one. Tune in the focal length, and that way you can look over that one if you want to.
Yeah, I seen where it said what the 4-inch head was supposed to be at a max of 11. Yeah, I guess I am a little bit out of specs.
Yeah, and this HR head is grayed out because that's the Thunder HR head, which it's still about the same, 3 to 4 millimeter, even on the Beam Buddy. But I graded out because I wasn't sure about those, because these are like I said, the specs for the head, and we did a test on it. And this is a kind of a revamp of it, of the original test, the 2-inch head versus the Beam Buddy. But if you look at the bottom, there's a PDF of the actual test that China submitted, and it is the 2-inch head versus the Beam Buddy and the HR head, the Thunder Laser HR head versus the Beam Buddy HR head. And they used an electron microscope to measure the spot size and all kinds of stuff, and compared how dirty they get, how fast, and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of good junk in here if you really want to jump down a rabbit hole. So let's see. Go back to-
Yeah, that Beam Buddy, that's the thing. Probably the two things I hate the most about it is how dirty it gets and how close you have to focus.
Yeah.
It's, doesn't leave you any room for error or material warpage, or you've got a piece of material that's warped that's held down with clips and it springs out.
Yeah, well, the Thunder HR head performs almost as well as the Beam Buddy, not quite, but it's close. It definitely gives it a run for its money. But what we found, and the reason we went with the Beam Buddy, is those HR heads from Thunder, the lenses would get fouled incredibly bad. They tried using a wide orifice and then applying a lot of volume. They tried using a small orifice, and settled on something midway, I think, or maybe the new ones have a smaller orifice in them. I didn't look at the other one, but the Beam Buddy is definitely better on keeping the lens, clean and helping mitigate that fouling. So.
What I found is for most things that I've done with it, the 2-inch has got more than sufficient detail. Normally the 2-inch can lay down dots more than what was in the actual picture or whatever I'm trying to do. The Beam Buddy was a nice to have, but not necessarily see much difference. And obviously, the bigger you go, as you stretch out the image onto a larger substrate, the less number of dots per inch you need.
Right.
You won't notice it, right? And then you go look at a billboard versus a keychain, right? Is
right.
The billboard, right? And if you were stood up there next to it, it's not got fine detail, right? But from far away, it's
If I was doing a billboard, I'd use a 4-inch lens.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
But yeah, and that's I've said it a couple of times in the past. That's one thing that I do like about how the American Photonics lenses, how he's put those together, is he keeps the focal distance the same, whether it's his 1.5, which is closer to the high resolution end, his 2 is 2.5, or his 4-inch, it's the same focal distance. Because he mounts the lenses, in there, and takes up the difference in his tube. And for the, if I do get into a very detailed bit, I tend to use that 1.5, just because that Beam Buddy doesn't leave you a whole lot of room in there. And when you're engraving it back and forth, it'll take up the magnets or whatever you're holding.
Yeah. I'm trying to find, I know those kits are in here. His site is a little difficult to navigate a little bit. That's a lens kit.
Yeah, he's got the lens kit. I think it's a 22 millimeter lens kit.
Does the 22 fit? Because we spec for 20.
Although 21, I don't remember. I measured.
Okay, 21 sounds better because we spec our Beam Buddy heads at 20 millimeters also, and they're a little loose sometimes. So 21 may be better. But there's the kit I think that he was talking about, and yeah, I haven't tried one. I've got the alignment tool, and I've got a set of his optics, just the raw optics, to fit in the machine without using his lens adapters. But I haven't had a chance to try them yet. But there's quite a few people using these, and they're fine to use. Be sure not to use autofocus with these. The only time you ever use autofocus is with the 2-inch stock lens, by the way. So.
Yep, no, I've used those, and they work all right. I tend to leave my 2-inch lens in there almost all the time. Even with cutting, I found most of what I cut, even when I cut thicker stuff, I'm better off cutting with the 2-inch and then just focus down a little bit. The 4-inch is great, but it's less power density. It burns the edges a lot more. I found I cut faster with the 2-inch lens and do 2 passes, and I can almost get the same time versus a slower pass.
Yeah. And plus, if you're doing something like 1/2 inch, you can be a millimeter or 2 from the surface, so your air assist is really getting in that curve because there's not a lot of gap between there. So, and I use my 2 for a lot. Now, when I was in the K40 world, the 2.5 inch lens was really popular. but that's looking at 40-watt machines, in the range of 40 or 60-watt machines. I'm not sure. I think I like the 2 better, maybe the 1.5 inch, but depending on what it is.
Yeah, no, I've actually got 8-inch birch with the beam brake. And because that spot size is finite, you dump a little bit more power. That's as well.
Yeah, thin stuff it'll do it. Yeah, like you say, you don't have that much range on your focal distance, but but it'll do it. It'll cut a razor blade too, but don't tell anybody because you can't do that with these tubes. They won't handle that reflection for very long.
Not supposed to. Need to find those one-way lenses.
What's that?
Need to find one-way lenses for mirrors, right? They'll reflect one unidirectional, like a blocking diode for your laser beam.
Right. I need one of those because I don't know if you saw, I was playing around and I took my red dot out and put one of those little cheap USB endoscope cameras in there. And I was able to see it fire on the substrate, monitoring it through that camera, through the beam steering, through the mirrors and optics. But there was so much of a bright flash, I couldn't actually tell what was going on. If I could mitigate that, put a filter on it, I think I might be able to see some cool stuff.
See Brian over there with a welding mask on. Watch.
So, and now that I've discovered the high resolution like ELP cams that they use for automation, and quality control, I think I'm going to try to adapt one of those in there and really see if I can see anything. I want to see the smoke inside the lens, inside the chamber, inside the nozzle, because I want to see if there's a Venturi effect going on if you use too much air, because that's something that's not ever talked about. But I think it could happen in that conical note, in that it could suck the air through around the mirror even, and bring in air from that way.
If you put too much volume pushing it, it's going to come from the lens and push down, and it'll pull it back through the top if there's
yeah. So it'd be neat to be able to see that. I'd have to smoke up a few lenses to see it probably.
Really nice
Okay,
high-speed
I have a
camera.
not so technical question.
Sure.
Y'all are going like way up here on me.
we do that.
Whenever I was setting up my laser, it had the instructions for the air compressor to keep the foam because of noise maybe or something. And I had no noise coming out of it other than I could hear it on, right?
Okay.
So I go and start practicing changing all those 3 things y'all were talking about, trying to, optimize. And so I started messing with air, and now it starts this little chattering extra like noise. So is that the noise they were talking about, or
well,
do you
if
need
you
to
set
do
it
I
on
need to send you
something
a sample?
to isolate it from the ground, just so it's not rattling on, on something.
Mhm.
If you set it on a blanket or something and you're still getting some weird noise that doesn't sound like it's supposed to, there may be an
Yeah.
issue. Have you submitted a ticket about
No,
that
I
yet?
didn't. It just started happening like 3 days ago, and it just I knew the call was coming up, so I just wanted to ask if anybody had that issue.
I had
And
someone else last week call in about a pump making noise, and we couldn't isolate it. So I'm having another one sent out, and I'm going to have it sent back to me, and I'm going to tear it apart and see what it was. But if you want to submit an email to support@thunderlaserusa.com, we can walk you through a few tests. With I usually like to take the screw off the side and pull that little filter out and just make sure that nothing rattles out of it, and take everything loose and give it a shake. Make sure there's not something loose rattling around in there, and then we can handle it from there. If it is a problem with the pump, we'll get one out to you.
Okay. That might save our marriage. I'm like, oh, it's normal. It said there's going to be noise. And my husband's
and
like,
it may be normal.
No, that's not normal.
Yeah, a video would help too. If you can make a video of it doing it, that may help me kind of pinpoint.
Yeah.
And
I'll
you could
send
just
you an
email
email.
that to support with that video, and I'll have a look at it.
Okay.
So.
All right. Now you can start talking about more of words I can't pronounce. So go ahead. I'm still.
I do have a
okay. Go for
a question that might come up, and it's just got my own curiosity. In the Rita, up where when you look at the screen and it gives you your file name and then speed and max power, and then you can see your layers and what you're sending through from there from Lightburn. So I had to like 500 to give you an example, like 530, but on the speed up in the red area where it says file name and then the speed and then max power, I had 200 MMs and 20% max power. Does that make sense?
If you're seeing the speed and power settings in the layers down in the lower part of the display, the far upper right display, that's just for jogging. That speed is just for jogging from the control panel, and that power is just for pulsing at the control panel.
Okay.
Whatever you send to Lightburn, it will honor whatever those settings are.
Yeah, I was
Are you
just wondering
saying
what
that
That's what
you
I
sent?
found out.
I was just
Are you,
wondering what the weird numbers were up in the top right where they show up in red. I figured it was something to do with controllers.
yeah, that's if you're hitting the pulse button at the control. Now you can change your values for those layers on the fly at the panel. I don't. I just resend the Lightburn file, but you can if you're trying to. You can pause it and go to that layer and use the buttons on the control panel to actually change your value there as well. So
yeah,
but the ones that show up that never look like they change, those are just for when you're actually jogging or pulsing at the control panel.
Okay. I was wondering because they were different numbers and they were up in the corner in red, and I just figured it was something to do with that wasn't about the job itself.
Right. So
yeah, it made a difference whenever you're, like you said, you're jogging. If it's 200, then you just hit it once and it's just going to barely move. But if it's at 1,000, it's going to go. Bzz.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sometimes you have to dial it down if you're trying to really get your red dot on a point. You got to dial that speed down a little.
Learn that.
You'll go past it. So, all right. Anybody else got anything? Hardeep, you should have your dog with you, man. I like your dog. He's my kind of guy. You got your mic off again.
I purposely left him out because it's time for him to go for a walk, and he'd be bugging the hell out of me. So.
Gotcha. I get that.
Yeah.
That's good. No new news on anything else. So I guess we'll have a few moments of awkward silence. Eventually somebody will talk.
Now, I did find a way to stay cool when you're working on your laser. That little blue stand that I told you I bought, I've got it on the one end of it. I had the laser running. I was sitting there, I was like, why is my crotch so freaking cold? There's two fans blowing out of the side of this thing. Move some cold air when you got the air conditioning on.
Uh-huh.
I was sitting there going, where is that cold air coming from? And it was the fans from blowing. So if you're ever hot, just stand in front of your laser on the one end.
Well, yeah, that won't help me any. I think I'm going to have to bite the bullet and get a mini split and put in here. My little portable one's not doing any good. As soon as I open the door, everything's gone. So it's only 84 in here right now, so that's good. Usually it's about 92.
I just got a big ass window air conditioner in here, and I've got roughly 900 and some odd square feet in here. But I want to go to a mini split. But right now it's 70 and 45% humidity.
Nice.
I've installed two of the Mr. Cool DIY mini splits.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot beat the bang for the buck if you can go drill a hole and install them. I've got two of the 24,000 BTU units. It's awesome.
For about what size space are you conditioning?
So I've got 700 and something, just shy of 800 square foot downstairs, and a little less than that upstairs.
Gotcha.
For each.
Okay.
And what I did is there's a online calculator where you go in and type in your square foot, you type in your zip code, it pulls your climate, you say whether you've got a insulated door, insulated windows, insulated walls, slab, and the temperature you make in the summer and the winter, and it'll kind of size your unit. And mine was, saying I needed 16,000 degrees. I didn't want to buy an 18,000 and push it, at its limit, so I'm at 22.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool.
So you're happy with the Mr. Cool's in? Because me coming from an HVAC industry, I was going to go with what we used to use, which is like Mitsubishi and the higher end stuff.
I have a Mitsubishi in my house, and I like the Mr. Cool's better.
Okay, because I was wondering for my shop.
That's 4 times the cost, and I like
Yeah.
Mr. Cool units better.
Because
Okay,
it's just
that's
for my
good.
shop, and I was wondering cost-wise if I'd be better off just going cheaper. And
Yeah. The one drawback from the DIY ones is it comes with the line set pre-charged, so you're limited on the length unless you want to cut them and recharge the line set. Re-arm is expensive.
yeah, it's the only problem having to cut those and then lose your charge.
Yeah, but other than
Now,
that, if you plan it right, it's not a big deal. You can roll up the little extra behind the outside unit.
now, is there a way to pull that charge into the heat pump side of things, and to basically pull a vacuum on that line to cut that line to make it shorter?
I don't know, Jim. I suspect if you were wanting to do that, you wouldn't buy the DIY ones, and then those ones. I don't know. I'm for DIY and install them too.
I was just curious because that's DIY would actually be easier just because of that, and I could just leave the coil laying in the attic. But I was just didn't know if you could actually, if it was set up to do that or not.
You may want to check on putting that coil up in the attic to make sure it's suitable, because that was my concern. I've got a warehouse and I built a 16 by 20 for my laser room, and they had to check it out to make sure that my outside unit would work inside. There was some concern about that. I'm not that versed on it, but there was
No, I
some.
wasn't talking about the actual coil itself. I was talking about the coil of copper that comes with it if you're too long, where you can just run it, leave it coiled, and then drop it back inside again.
And talking out coiling up the extra line set.
But that Mitsubishi works good.
I'm gonna check both of them out.
They've even got
Yeah,
fancy
Brian.
ones, Brian, that you can get LED displays on that do pictures and do all kinds of stuff. They've got all kinds of fancy ones, you being a techie person.
Yeah,
Brian, mine ties into those home assistants, so you can talk to one of those ladies and say, "Hey Google," or "Hey Alexa, set the AC downstairs in the shop." It's got apps. I bought
yeah.
2 of the 25,000 or 24,000 BTU units. The disconnect, all the electrical stuff, you install it, the actual, mounting. So I don't have a mounting on that. I actually have a mounting up off the ground, so you don't blow all the gas shavings and cut the grass into them. Yeah, everything installed and done. 2 units total was less than 3,500. I had a quote for more than that to have a one
Wow,
unit installed.
that is cheap.
Yeah, I think the unit itself
That
was
is
maybe $1,600 on Amazon and delivered.
on Amazon, not anybody local box
The-
store.
I,
Okay, I have to
I'm
check that
I'm
out.
looking at the Mr. Cools at Lowe's, and they're like 2588. For a 2700. 2500, 2700. Amazon probably be yeah. I'm looking there too. He's got my interest up.
I know, right? You can see this back here is
And
an air
yeah,
conditioning unit.
and I've got a decent setup because where I think I want to put it, it's going to be on the same wall as my main panel and everything. So
What's at that spot? Look right behind me, right up there. That's what's been reserved this whole entire time from when I put my mini split in.
mhm.
I've just literally put nothing up there because that way it's about centralized in the shop.
Cool. Have to check those out. Trying to think if there's anything else that has come up that is noteworthy, and I don't think there is. I was looking through my notes. Still waiting on Aurora stuff. We're getting that hammered out. It won't be too much longer. Hopefully another month maybe. They said the fall. So what does that mean? What does the fall actually mean? All of my seasons all run together anyway. It'll be 60 here one day and 90 the next. So it's pretty insane.
Football season is fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe a little sooner.
I guess the only thing I could add as a generic thing is just watching Facebook and seeing what people post. People, when they order these, they need to look at your videos, Robert's videos, and do some research versus panicking at the last minute and not understanding what they need for ventilation, compressors, measurements to get it inside their home. There's so much information out there that if they just take a couple minutes and read and look, they could save themselves a lot of headaches.
Yeah, and most people I think do a pretty good job. We don't actually get a whole lot of calls about it, but every once in a while you'll see a panic mode. And
Just lately, there's been a lot of
I
them.
take offense to that.
well, if it helps any, my approach to these machines is to drive them like you stole them because they can handle it. And whatever you can't handle, we're here to help you with. So
Yeah,
and
it
some
it
people
was
will go,
it was raining and carrying on, and the ground was soft, and I was like, my problem was the unknown of what the truck was going to be like and bringing it, and it just
well, that would
just
scare
very,
anybody because knowing what those trucks
yeah,
can do is a pretty odd thing.
yeah, it's crazy. But yes, and no matter what you do, sometimes research. When they said it's coming, I went, because up until that point, I was like, we got this, we can do this. And my husband's like, I don't know. And I'm like, thank God I had flags flying in the trees because the driver says, you're patriotic, I'll help you. Where do you want me to put it? And I was like, you're going to be sorry you said that. And he earned his tip, is all I can say.
Awesome.
So,
all right.
So, yeah.
So
it's funny when you mention that, because you get some people that will put comments on Facebook that literally buy a laser, they spend anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. It turns up at their house and they've done no research. And then you get some people, myself, right? I had an accurate 3D model put in my space 2 months before I got it. And oddly enough, that wasn't because Thunder had one available. I went in and took the dimensions and went and watched YouTube videos and screenshot it. So this is this long, and went in and kind of reverse engineered and put it in there. So I was designing table for the accessories and things for it.
Well, that was like my ventilation the week that I ordered it. I had already ordered my exhaust and all my airline and stuff, and I had it installed, I think, the week that I ordered it, just for prep, so that way I didn't get caught behind with my pants down. But it was literally from just looking through all the online information that I was able to gather everything I needed.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Jeremy got his a couple months ahead of me, and I got to follow him through the process of getting ready, and that helped a lot, a big lot, just listening.
This community does provide a lot of details and a lot of good info, that you come across. So that's another thing that's great about it. So speaking of Robert, we were talking about him earlier. There he is. How's it going, man?
Hey, how's everybody doing? Were my ears burning?
Hey,
yeah,
Robert,
they were.
They should have been.
Stopping by.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we were talking about your videos and stuff, and we were talking about those pressure monitors. Okay, she's got something for you.
Yeah, you inspired me yesterday. I watched your video on your new machine. Congratulations, by the way. So it's not your same design, but I come from April's cutting history, so I had a bunch of files I could use. So
good deal.
Thank you for all you do, Robert.
God, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a fun little project. I figured out it's a perfect way to get the very first cuts done on the new machine. And yeah, the delivery went well, and I got her all hooked up, and I was amazed on how clean the inside of that machine was when I got it in and started cleaning things up, checking optics and those kind of things. I just was amazed on how far it had come and how clean it was on the inside. But yeah, seems to be working great, so looking forward to it.
Awesome. So did you get a chance to play with that monitor any? Did I send you?
I did. I got it all hooked up on the 24, and I think the biggest thing that you got to realize is the PSI that it's showing is not the actual PSI, right? If you hold your finger over your nozzle, it will tell you the actual PSI, but it's all relative, right? As long as you're bringing it back to a certain amount. But
right.
Yeah, what I'm hoping to do is be able to demonstrate here in maybe next couple of weeks when I get caught up, the effects that adjusting your pressure has on not only on engraving, but the amount of residue you have on your cutting.
do you have one of those light object engraving enhancer nozzles?
I
Did you
don't.
pick one of those up? They're like
No.
$25 or something like that. I've been playing with that thing, and it's not. I mean, nothing will get rid of everything,
Right.
but it really seems to mitigate a lot of that stuff. It's a pretty neat thing because we used to build our K40s that way.
Huh.
But with that kind of and Epilogue and Trotec and a lot of those guys use. I call it the brake line method, where you just have just a piece of tube sitting down there shooting at it. I like
Right.
being able to adjust it and have it go across, and at the same, I don't know. I'm starting to like it. So
Do you lose any Y movement at all up front with that sticking up front like that, Brian?
I haven't tested it to its extents because again, I'm not really one that pushes the envelope when it comes to making things. So
Gotcha.
I haven't pushed it far enough to see about that. I did mention earlier when we were talking about plumbing these things up in the machines to always lay it out first and make sure that none of your gantry components and all that stuff will get up into the plumbing. And it's real important that fitment be thought about a lot. So
Yep. I will mention on that digital pressure monitor that I hooked up, your only option, at least on the 24, is to put it on the left-hand side of the control panel for the air, because if you try to put it in the middle or anything but over to the far left, you're going to be in trouble with the gantry. So just keep that in mind.
yeah, and when I did mine, I just took my drill and felt under there, and I didn't feel anything, and I went, and after looking, that was probably one of the worst places I could have put it, right in the mix of all those wires and connectors and airline and all of that stuff. So yeah, you don't
on
have
the
to
24,
do everything I do.
that's right where all of the wiring and the air harness meet.
Yeah. I was actually into that little spot welded anchor that's on there for the wire ties. I took a little side of that off a little bit.
Yep. But I really like that digital monitor. It's nice. I mean, it'll read right down to tenths if that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to hook up. It doesn't take any room. So takes about half the space of a regular pressure gauge. So a little bit more expensive, but sure, it makes it nice.
Yeah, cool.
Well, another thing there, Robert, to a couple of your points, right? You mentioned that it doesn't measure the actual PSI, but at the end of the day, right, the PSI is irrelative, right? As long as you've got a number that you can repeat, say, I get this result, whether it was in 15 megapascals or 9 PSI or 5 units of whatever measurement, as long as you've got a number that can get you back to a repeatable bit, that's the value of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if nobody's going to hook them up exactly the same, there's not a real high likelihood. So it's not like you'll be able to pass them around anyway, so it's when you quantify it, it's for your own, I don't know that a library of air pressures would be very effective, to even try to manage something like that. Did I tell you how, Robert, did I tell you how excited I was about that RF Odin?
No.
Okay, so I've had this Odin 22 sitting here next to the 35 for a year,
right?
And I don't run it much. It was a prototype. I had to hacksaw the end of the nozzle off to make the autofocus work, and some stuff like that. And it just sat there. I ran it once or twice just to say, hey, here's an RF tube, Thunder machine. And I took it over to my dad. He's a woodworker, and he said he didn't want to learn lasers. He didn't, well, he's starting to learn lasers. I put it over there and he didn't have much choice. Didn't have a chiller to deal with, and that was a good thing for him. So he's messing with it. I did a test over there on that thing, and I was blown away. It'd been so long since I used a ULS or another RF tube. I was blown away at what it did, and I'm super excited because the Odin 32 is on its way.
Oh,
and
good.
It's a 60 watt RF machine,
which
is
more
like it. That's more right. Like it.
Yep.
And
I was hoping they were going to do that because
they did.
What was the other one? Was a 40?
Yeah, it was a 30.
30. Yeah, just not enough.
And a 22-inch wide bed. This one's going to be 32. It's almost as big as a Nova 35.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And a 60 watt RF air cooled. Yeah. And I'm super excited about it. They've made some more changes to the head and gotten some more speed out of it and things like that, reduced some of the weight. So I'm super bumped about this RF Odin 32 again. So you probably see more about it. I didn't get a warm fuzzy about the first one. Y'all could probably tell.
How is the depth
on
the Z depth?
The Z depth.
I'm not sure. It's 6-ish, 7-ish,
I was just
probably.
thinking for with a rotor boss,
Yeah,
what
the low
able to
roller.
come at.
Yeah, the low boy for sure. It's got a rotary port on it. It'll accept the rotary. It may have to take the low roller like the Nova 24,
24.
but the 32 may be bigger. The specs are on the Chinese site, and we'll have them up pretty soon on the Odin. So,
There's
but
two
yeah,
things
I'm
I was
excited. Mhm.
thinking about, future expansion, right? Is a portable laser, something you could put in like an enclosed trailer and bring to craft show places. A lot easier to do it with an RF tube where you don't have to worry about the sensitivity of the glass
Right.
bouncing on the road and bringing the chiller, and a lot less to deal with if you format it mobile.
Yeah,
Obviously, if it's faster, it helps. So if you're having limited on the time of the show.
yeah, you're getting a little garbled. I don't know if you're getting some latency or something there, but yeah, absolutely. The RF makes total sense for making a portable rig. So.
What's the weight on that? Do you know, Brian?
Let me pull it up. I'll just pull them up real quick. Thunderlaser.com. And where is my little button to share screen? There it is, hidden. I believe that'll be the right one. We'll go to Odin. It may take just a minute to pop up. Wow, it's not showing up. Oh, because the page is still loading. It won't render the page. You guys can't see it yet, can you?
No.
That's weird. It won't render the page until it's all the way loaded. Let me close some tabs. I've got about 30 tabs open. It'd probably help if I close some of them. Or reload. There it goes. Okay. So there's the tech specs. The Odin 32 is a 60 watt. The working area is 32 by 20. That's not too shabby.
No.
Table size is 35.4 by 23. Let's see. What does it say on Z-axis? Z-axis height 7.3 inches on both machines. On the 22
so it's quite a bit. It's bigger than the 24, or deeper than the 24.
Yeah, and it weighs twice as much as the Odin 22, so it's a big boy. I got one coming, hopefully soon. So, but the fiber's coming first. That we got to get that first. And I've also talked about, and if we talked about this in the last thing, let me know. But and I know I'm over almost. I probably have to go. The those two places that are sending out dual source machines. I think we talked about that last about the dual CO2. And I mentioned to China that we should do a CO2/fiber, like the Epilog Fusion. So I'm waiting to hear back if they're going to do any kind of innovation in that respect. And then I saw that video. Did anybody else see it? That Germany put up with that 300 watt or something RF tube in a Nova 63 or something. And then they pulled it down and made the video not available. So,
a teaser.
Yeah, well, they do a lot of stuff. They designed all the class 8, the class 1 lasers that we sell. They did all the electronics and all of that stuff for that class 1 or class whatever it is. The ones we send out to schools. It's got like a dead man switch on it where you can have 2 hands on it or something crazy. There's a lot more steps you got to go through to make it actually fire. But yeah, they developed all of that stuff, I think. So.
Yeah, going to schools, I can understand why.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm looking real forward. I think these are some newer pictures, but they said they've made a lot of changes to the head and stuff, and that already looks a little better. So I can't wait to see the 32. I think it'll be a strong performer. I think we can beat Epilog and ULS, and for bang for the buck with one of these. Whereas the 22, like I said, I didn't have a warm fuzzy about. I just had to like it. I'm still recording. Hang on a minute. I'm gonna turn that off.